Hi guys. I am so excited. I cannot wait for tonight. I'm gonna go see Smile 2, and I was a big fan of the first one. I know for some people it was hit or miss, but I really appreciated all of the detail in the first film, so I can't wait to see what they bring out for number 2. I love the idea of this for so many reasons. Number one, Parker Finn, who directed and wrote the first film, is back for the second, which is very exciting. I love when people hold on to their original films. The original film was about Rose, a psychiatrist that bears witness to a bizarre yet horrific incident with a patient that passes a curse onto her through their menacing smile. There were so many cool aspects of this film. It really felt like it brought back that investigation horror, which I'm a huge fan of. It also had homages to Ring, of course, with the investigation, but some of the reveals, some of the jump scares in this film were really reminiscent of other horror movies, including Halloween 3. There was just little nods everywhere, and you can tell it took a lot of influence from horror movies that we love. But it also felt very much like horror movies I grew up with the relationship between Rose and the cop, who is Joel, played by Kyle Gallner. He was a detective cop, but they also had a fling in the past. The reason I'm recapping that part, by the end of the last film, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, this is what the new film I assume is going to open up with. Spoiler for the last film, spoiler. I'm not going to spoil the whole thing because you might want to go back and watch it, but at the very end, spoiler, the curse is passed on to Joel, and Joel's also in this film, so I assume it's going to start with him and be a continuation of the same curse we know and love. I really love the entity in the original film, and something else that I'm really looking forward to is the color theory. I spoke about this in my original review for the first film, but there was this strange thing that they did with matching the colors, especially baby pink and baby blue, to different characters, and I just love little details like that. Also, she was in her car for a lot of the film, so I wonder if that's gonna happen again this time. And of course, the film had a blatant, not even metaphor, I wouldn't say, because they explain the curse and how it is a form of trauma being passed on to others. I'm gonna let you guys know if it's worth your time, number one. Number two, if it lives up to the first one. And number three, if you can watch it alone. Maybe you don't wanna do a recap. Maybe you're gonna take someone who hasn't seen the first film. I'll let you know whether it stands up by itself. I'm assuming it's a continuation, so unless they do a recap of what we already know about the curse, I don't know if it's gonna work the same. It's always good to have that knowledge in the back of your brain. But this one is about a pop star, Sky Riley, who is experiencing unexplainable horrific events and is also overwhelmed by the pressures of fame, is forced to face her past. We'll see if it takes the same angle or a slightly different one. I do love the idea of a concert horror movie. Yes, trap happened. Trap was a thing. I've not ruled it out just yet. I think it's a really cool setting, especially now when, you know, world tours are a huge thing again. Obviously they always have been, but it's just a different level now. The fandom is just insane with how people are purchasing tickets and how things are available to us in different ways, and stan culture. So I think it's very interesting. Either way, I'm very excited to take you guys along with me to the Perth, Australia premiere. Let's go see Smile 2 and see if it's worth your time and if it's as scary as the first one. I thought the first one was pretty eerie. I'm not gonna lie. Let's go. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts. This is exactly why I make these videos, because it's to set the expectations and let you know what you're getting yourself into without spoiling anything. And this film is perfect for that, because I really enjoyed the first one, and this film I felt like touched on the subject in a different way, which is expected, but a very different focus on the lore and letting that unravel. I do think that you probably have to see the first one to get the most out of this one. Going in blind, yeah, you can kind of figure it out. And you know what? I'm going to do you a solid. I'm going to leave down in the description just a little summary of the first one. If you want to take a friend to go see the second one and you think you need some information maybe to give them, I'm going to leave that below for you. So you can kind of have a startup guide, because I really do think you have to go in knowing something to actually understand what's going on during this film. But in saying that, this film is a weird kind of extension, obviously, on the first one, but I don't feel like it does its own thing enough or explores it in a profound way. I was hoping for a little bit more in terms of the lore and uncovering maybe origins, things like that. I like the investigation, and as I always say in these videos, I'm talking about the film in a way that you will know whether it suits your personal taste. And for me personally, I didn't like this as much as the first one because I really love the investigation angle. And this one kind of takes that out and makes it more about fame and kind of like the pressures of fame, not knowing who to trust, and really, I guess, looking at what the entity could do if you were in the spotlight and how that could destroy your life in a completely different way. Because in the first film, we looked at a psychiatrist, and her life crumbled because of the entity and the curse. But in this one, it happens in such a different way. So you're really just following the paces through for that. In saying all of that, there is a lot still here to discover. It's just not the investigation angle, which is more my preference. And it's not so much to do with the lore or the origin. You're basically going to go in and you're going to watch the story, the curse affect someone, and how it crumbles someone from a completely different lifestyle. So in this film, we watch Skylar get involved with the curse. She is a star who's just come back to the spotlight after a year break from a horrific accident. And of course, her past traumas allow this curse to sink into her deep. I felt that it was a very strange reaction for this film. It's a little bit, I wouldn't say more lighthearted, because the traumas in it, it's so intense. There's this, one of the scenes, I don't want to say nearly cried, but it really got me. I think it's really powerful what they've done when demonstrating her past traumas. But I do think a lot of what is happening to her has a comedic kind of tone to it, and I wasn't sure if it was fully intended. When you go to a cinema that is full of people watching it for the first time, especially if they're not all horror fans, which with these premieres, sometimes it's not all horror fans, it's people who are invited and they go along just for the fun of it. People were laughing nonstop, and I do think that there was definitely a lot of humor that was put in there, one-liners, people acting weird and then characters kind of checking them and that being funny, or some kind of stereotypical fame star stuff that I guess people find funny because it's so typical that a star would act that way. And I feel like it was really hard to move away from that tone, so it did feel very, I don't want to say it's more lighthearted, but it was just all of the dark stuff when it got to really scary moments. It was hard to kind of pull yourself back into the zone and feel those jump scares in the same way. In the original film, I feel like you're really put on the spot and you're really pulled through her downfall and you are almost going insane with her. It's like you're being gaslit by the entity. But in this one, you can feel yourself outside of it looking in on the situation. I guess because she's not as relatable, it really changes that. So I really recommend going into this film with the state of mind that you are following along a character who is going through something you already understand from the first one. That's what the film is all about. Okay, in saying all of that, the gore in this film is epic. They did really well. I really liked the creature in the first one. I know some people had a problem with that. I think it's really creative. I thought those aspects were done very well. There's also a lot of blood and guts and all that good stuff. So I do think this one might be slightly gorier than the first one, especially towards the end. And the other aspects I really liked is the music. The music is beautiful in the first one and in this one. And this one, they kept it strong. They have just the creepiest element, and it works really perfectly with this film and fits the stylization really well. And speaking of stylization, I did look out for the colorization. I didn't feel a strong color theory, although everything is pristine in this as someone who is very wealthy. And I was really sad to not see any color theory used, although there are a lot of metallics, but I just think that that is quite typical of a star who's on stage and has costumes. But there was no really iconic color that was attached to her. That would have been really cool if they just kept a color attached to each character throughout this franchise. They kept the whip pans, which were really fun. You know, the reveals, I liked that. And there were a few nods again, probably the same or similar horror movies that they have done in the past, including The Ring. So that's fun. Obviously it's in the same world, it's just an extension of it, but I was hoping it was going to go deeper. Because we know that the trail goes back so far. So I was hoping we were going to learn something new, and we learned some stuff, but not enough for it to feel like it's an important addition. But in saying all of that, which I've said a lot, the film, I feel like, also lacks flow. And it's because we're being dragged through by her, but from, it doesn't really feel like we're in her perspective. We're kind of like watching all this stuff happen to her. With the tonal changes, being funny at one moment, trying to be scary the next, then some intense gore. Instead of it being whiplash where you don't know what's happening next and it really catches you off guard, it felt long and like it was a very long journey to get where it was going. And I think that this film should be a miniseries because they really focused on all of these different aspects, and just to give time and flesh it out into different episodes would have been really cool, like a 6-part. I think that there was a lot of good there that could have been extended. I just think it would have been really cool to slow it down and explore it and really flesh it out properly so it feels like a better addition to the story and the lore. I do think it's worth your time if you liked the first one. I think you're gonna like this. If you didn't like the first one, I can see maybe people who appreciate gore might want to check it out. It's a really fun popcorn horror movie. I really appreciated seeing the perspective of this through someone who is famous's eyes. I think that's really cool for a horror movie, but I don't think it added a lot to the horror that is this entity, and all of the mystery is kind of gone now. It had just a different feeling. I also do want to say that with the stylization, another thing that was really cool about The Fame was the dancing and choreography. They used that in a really special way in this film, and I thought it was great. There's going to be a lot of surprises in this film. If you're looking for a popcorn horror movie with a lot of gore, that's easy to watch and understand what's happening, doesn't add too much to the lore, but it is a interesting journey with a lot of really good stylization. This one is going to be it for you, but I wanted more investigation, and that's just a personal preference. Oh, and the last thing is there is a water brand that sponsored the hell out of this movie, and I don't really care usually, but it was relentless, so have fun with that. I'm gonna give this film a 7 out of 10. I definitely preferred the last one, even though they end up in the same part of the scale. I am going to give an originality score of maybe 5. I didn't think it was that original. There's some cool entity stuff in there. There really is. It's a hard act to follow this year because there's a lot going on. And I think this one kind of even creeps into the body horror subgenre in a way. So I think that's really cool. But there's been a lot of really great body horror this year. For scare, I do think that there was some scary moments. There was one moment that really got me. I found it to be quite a sad story as well. But I would give it maybe a 7. I think a 7 out of 10. I think this is one of this, you know, the scary films that you want to go and watch. If you want to go get jump scared with your friends, this is definitely the one. Or by yourself like me. I'm very cool. Okay, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Don't forget, I watched some disturbing movies last week. You'll want to check out this one. And also, I watched this amazing thriller that you guys need to hear about. Again, spoiler free up here. Check that out. And I'll talk to you all very soon. Stay safe and stay spooky. Bye, friends.